Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Allison, in your discussion with Mr. Foster a few minutes ago, you talked about this program and made it sound like it was apple pie, wonderful. I think the word profit was used several times in that discussion. But so I'm just curious, what do we expect, what do the taxpayers expect when it comes to the TARP dollars, their dollars that were put into AIG, GM, Chrysler, the financing arm of GM, the financing arm of Chrysler? What do we expect to happen there? Are we going to be able to use the word profit when we're talking about all that money, those billions of dollars put in those 5 entities?
Well, just last week we published our valuations of all of our assets, and we'll be sending you a copy of this if you haven't already received it. And it is a full report on our approach to valuation and the current values of these positions. And the way that we value them is where possible to use market instruments
Cut to the chase. Are we going to be able to use the word profit like you did so many times in talking about the banks?
Well, it's, I'd say, too early to be able to estimate what the outcomes will be. Currently,
hasn't the Secretary himself said that we are not likely to make a profit on AIG, GM, and Chrysler?
Right. Currently, we show that the total current valuation of the auto companies and AIG would be a loss of about $60 billion, which is less than it was before. Again, let me emphasize that the projected losses using the accepted means of valuation were about $341 billion. They're $200 billion less than that over the entire program. The investments in total that have been made so far would show a yes, sir.
The picture's not quite as rosy when we talk about all the money that's been put into those entities.
Yes, sir. That's true. Today, they are marked as losses.
Rational people, including the Secretary of Treasury himself, would say it's likely the American taxpayer is going to lose on those 5.
Based on current valuations.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I could, and this I think brings up a point. I think it's important. You know, think about this. This committee has had over the last year, I forget how many hearings on Bank of America. We've had Mr. Borofsky in front of this committee a couple times, I believe. We've had Mr. Kashkari, Mr. Allison today, and we appreciate that. We've had Mr. Feinberg, and I do want to ask the gentleman a question about Mr. Feinberg. We had a hearing in Cleveland, Ohio, at the chairman's request on the HAMP program. Miserable failure, we found out at that hearing, a home mortgage modification program not working. At some point, I think it makes sense. Treasury Secretary seems to be able to come and testify in front of the Budget Committee, in front of other committees. Makes sense for him to come in front of the Oversight Committee, whether it's this subcommittee on domestic policy, Mr. Chairman, or frankly the full committee. That seems to be in order, and frankly it should have happened sooner rather than later. And I got another question, Mr. Chairman, but I guess I was directing that question to the Chairman a little bit.
You know, I'll respond to the gentleman's question. I think the gentleman raised a valid point about the responsibilities that we have as a subcommittee for oversight on this matter. And let's consult and draft a letter of invitation. Thank you.
I appreciate the Chairman's willingness to do that. Let me just ask you one last question, Mr. Allison. We did have Mr. Feinberg here. What kind of interaction do you have with the executive compensation czar, so-called pay czar?
I speak with the pay czar from time to time. That is Mr. Feinberg, who is the special master overseeing compensation of companies that have received exceptional assistance.
Speak with him from time to time. Do you review his decisions at all? Do you weigh in on his decisions when it comes to compensation for executives?
Mr. Feinberg's decisions are his own. He's independent for those purposes.
Does Mr. Feinberg answer to anybody?
Mr. Feinberg is responsible to the Secretary of the Treasury for performing his role, but Mr. Feinberg has been making his decisions independently.
Are you troubled by the fact, I mean, you're an accomplished individual, served our country in the Navy, you got an undergraduate degree from Yale, master's degree from Stanford, held many important roles in private sector and now the public sector. Are you troubled by the fact that we have one single individual in the United States government telling private American citizens how much money they can make?
First of all, Mr. Feinberg has made his decisions transparent. The American people can judge for themselves.
That's not what I asked. Are you troubled that someone with your education, your experience, your background, and frankly, someone whose title is Secretary for Financial Stability overseeing the TARP program, are you troubled by the fact we have in the United States of America one single individual telling private American citizens how much money they can make?
Gentleman's time's expired, but you may answer, and I would encourage you to answer the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have to, again, put this in the context. We made investments on behalf of the taxpayers, extraordinary investments, unprecedented, in financial institutions. These are temporary investments. We have to protect the taxpayers' interests. And therefore,
yes or no?
there was compensation.
Yes or no? It's a yes or no. And I would tell Mr. Feinberg said yes, he is troubled by that fact.
Well,
and he himself said that when I asked him the same question.
I would say that it's unfortunate that we're at the point, because of this crisis, where a special master has to be appointed to protect the interests of taxpayers. I think that he has a very difficult job. I think he's performing it well.
Thanks.
So I'm not troubled by his performance at all.
Thanks, gentlemen. Well, we're going to go to Mr. Cummings. You're recognized for 5 minutes.